My feet ached and something sour churned in my stomach. My brother Dave and I had been exploring Helsinki all day, and we were exhausted. We were stranded in town for a day because of a canceled flight, and we had turned it into a little sightseeing adventure. I didn't know anything about Helsinki or Finland before that day, and we let our phones guide us around town to various restaurants and sites. Now we needed to get back to our hotel, and both of our phones were dying. I was looking forward to going back. My stomach had been giving me issues all afternoon. We ate some kind of fish for lunch. At least that's what I think it was. The English translations on the menus weren't very helpful, and we didn't get useful results when we searched on our phones either. I called the rideshare because my phone was at 4% compared to Dave's 2%. But a minute or so before the car showed up, my screen went dark as my phone died. The car, a tiny little European model with decals for multiple rideshare companies, pulled up in front of us. The stocky bearded man in the driver's seat rolled down his window and said something to us in Finnish. Dave and I shrugged at each other. This was probably our ride. We shoved ourselves in the tiny back seat and said hello to the driver. He nodded and smiled. He eased the car away from the curb and into the flow of traffic. Dave had a better view of the driver than I did, and I could feel his body stiffen with anxiety next to me. Dave started typing something on his phone and held it out to me. All I could read on the screen was, "The driver is," and then the screen blipped out as Dave's phone also died. Dave leaned over and whispered in my ear. "Bleeding," he said. "The driver is bleeding. Scratches on his forearms." I snuck a peek. The driver was wearing long sleeves, but they were slipping down his thick, hairy forearms, exposing fresh gashes. He pushed his sleeves over his wrist to cover the scratches up, but I knew they were there. The driver held the wheel in a white-knuckle grip. I pictured those hands closed around someone's throat while someone scratched at his forearms in self-defense. That cramp in my stomach worsened. The combination of strange fish and stress about our driver's arms was making me nauseous. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation. This had to be our driver, right? And he had to be trustworthy enough to drive for the rideshare company. "Are you from around here?" I asked. The driver shook his head. That didn't make me feel better. Was he shaking his head saying he wasn't from around here? Or was he shaking his head to say he couldn't understand me? Dave and I exchanged a worried look. Dave leaned forward and asked if we were going to the Hilton. The driver nodded his head this time, but the engine roared as he put his foot on the gas. I said a little prayer and cursed myself for letting my phone die in a foreign country. A few minutes later, a bridge appeared in front of us. I didn't remember exactly where our hotel was, but I knew we didn't go over a bridge on our way from the hotel to downtown. I tapped Dave's knee, and he nodded back at me. I turned my palms face up in a "what do we do" motion, and Dave shook his head and mouthed, "I don't know." That pain in my stomach exploded again, like someone was wringing out my internal organs. I doubled over in agony as I heard the surface beneath the car's wheels change. We were on the bridge. I wondered what was waiting for us on the other side. I felt a pang of hope when I saw a stoplight at the end of the bridge. Perfect. We could get out and escape. We just needed a red light. The light at the end of the bridge remained green, and we glided right through. I'd never been so mad to hit a green light. At the next stoplight, the driver sped up just enough to make it through before it turned red. This guy was going to do everything he could to keep that car moving. He swerved around a construction zone, slinging our bodies around the back seat. That's when my stomach finally gave in. I could feel it coming, climbing up from my belly to my chest and into my throat. I put a hand over my mouth and retched. Dave looked over and saw me. He yelled to the driver that I was about to puke. I burped, sending a noxious cloud of fish and bile-scented air around the interior of the tiny car. That was enough for the driver. I heard him gag and shout something that I'm sure was a Finnish curse word. He swerved the car again and slammed on the brake. The car lurched to a stop along the side of the road, and I threw my door open just in time to unleash my lunch onto the pavement. Dave pushed me out of the car and I nearly slipped in my vomit on the way out. Dave yelled a sarcastic thank you to the driver and slammed the door behind us. He grabbed my hand and practically dragged me along the sidewalk away from the car. Fortunately, we were still in a well-populated area, so the driver didn't jump out and pursue us. I looked back and saw the car driving away. My feet still ached and we had a long walk ahead of us, but my stomach felt better. If you find yourself in an unfamiliar place, or even if you're just trying to get home in your own town, be sure to double-check who your driver is and what kind of car they're driving. Conserve as much of your phone battery as you can, and be careful out there. We were lucky that the fish, or whatever that was, didn't agree with me that day, and that our mysterious driver had a sensitive stomach. Otherwise, who knows where we'd be. I've been doing rideshare for about a year by then, working evenings into the late hours. You get used to things. Drunk passengers who can barely form sentences, couples bickering in the back seat, long silent rides where nobody says a word. The silence never bothered me. That night, I'd gone nearly 40 minutes without a single ping when a request finally came in. A strip mall on the edge of town. The kind of place that feels busy during the day and completely abandoned after midnight. A bowling alley, a couple of small restaurants, a dollar store. All dark, all closed. The name on the request was just D. No photo. I almost passed on it, but it was the only request I'd seen in a while. I accepted and drove over. The lot was empty, like I expected. A few overhead lights were still on, casting that dull orange glow over the asphalt. One person stood near the bowling alley entrance, tall, wearing a hoodie, hands buried in his pockets. He didn't wave or step toward me. He just stood there, slightly still, watching as I pulled up. I rolled down my window. "You D?" He leaned forward, squinting at me through the glass, then gave a small nod and climbed into the back. The door closed gently. He said nothing. I started the trip. The destination was about 20 minutes out, a residential area. I didn't drive through often. I confirmed it with him. He said yeah, quiet, flat, and that was it. The silence that followed wasn't the usual kind. It wasn't someone zoning out on their phone or watching the street go by. It felt heavier. I glanced in the rearview mirror a couple of times. Each time he was staring straight ahead, not at anything in particular. At the back of my head, I told myself to let it go. Some people are just off, socially awkward, not my problem. Then he spoke. "You still driving this late?" "Yeah," I said. "Nights are usually better." A pause. I watched his eyes move in the mirror. "Thought you would have stopped by now," he said. I frowned. "Stopped? I only started last year." "Right," he said. It didn't sound like agreement. It sounded like a correction. He went quiet again. A few minutes passed. Then the questions started back up. Casual on the surface, but something underneath them felt off. Did I live around here? Did I usually pick up from that plaza? Each one felt less like conversation and more like he was checking something, verifying details, lining something up. The unease settled in slowly. We were about 15 minutes in when he leaned forward and pointed. "Pull into that driveway." I looked up. The destination in the app was still a few houses down. "That's not the... just pull in," he said. His voice was calm, not aggressive, but certain in a way that made me stop arguing. I slowed and turned in. The house was dark, no lights inside or out. The yard was overgrown, grass crowding the walkway, paint peeling off the siding. No car, no signs of anyone home. I stopped near the front. "This your place?" He didn't answer. He was staring at the house. "Wait here," he said, and got out. He didn't go to the front door. He moved along the side of the house and disappeared into the dark. I sat there with my hands on the wheel. A minute passed. Nothing. No sounds, no lights. Just the quiet of an empty street and the trip still running on my phone. I was thinking about just leaving when I noticed it. The side door of the house, slightly ajar, just enough to catch the streetlight. It hadn't been like that before. Then he came back, walking faster now, not running, but with a different kind of energy, purposeful, changed. He got in and pulled the door shut hard. Go. I pulled out without asking. We were back on the street before I said anything. Everything all right? Nothing. I checked the mirror. He was watching me again. Not just generally forward, but directly at my face. You change your car? He asked. No, had it the whole time. You look different, he said. My grip tightened on the wheel. I don't think you've had me before. He didn't answer that. He leaned back and kept watching. Take me back to where you picked me up. I turned around and drove back toward the strip mall. The ride back felt longer. He didn't ask anything more, but he didn't stop looking at me either. At one point, he leaned forward, tilting slightly, studying my reflection in the mirror more carefully. Then he said it, quiet, almost to himself. You're not him. I didn't respond. A pause. Then, he drives nights too. Something dropped in my stomach. That's when it all landed. The questions, the checking, the house, the way he'd been staring at me since the moment he got in. He hadn't been studying me. He'd been comparing me, looking for someone specific. And that house, whatever had been waiting inside that house, that had been meant for someone else. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I just drove. When we pulled back into the strip mall, I parked under the same light where I'd picked him up. The lot was still empty. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then he leaned forward one last time. If it was you, he said, this would have gone different. He opened the door, stepped out, and paused, half in, half out. He looked at me one more time. Then he shut the door and walked off into the dark behind the building. I sat there long after he was gone. I ended the trip. I drove home. I didn't take another ride that night. Sometimes now, late at night, when I get a pickup from somewhere quiet and empty, I check the name before I accept. Not because I'm afraid of who might get in, but because I can't shake the thought that one night, someone's going to climb into my back seat, catch my face in that mirror, and recognize me. Sometimes you just need a pizza on a Monday night. I had a long, frustrating day at work, and I made up my mind before I left the office that I was going to order pizza that night. It gave me something to look forward to as I finished off my day. It was a dreary February day, and the sun was almost down by the time I got home from work. I pulled up Uber Eats and went to my usual restaurants. We didn't have that many places to choose from in our little town. Manelli's Pizza was a local place that made a delicious barbecue chicken pizza. I ordered that and threw in an order of breadsticks. I kicked back on my couch and felt my anxiety melt away as I waited for the food to arrive. I saw the car's headlights pull up, perfectly on time. I slumped down on the couch so the driver couldn't see me waiting for him. It's a little embarrassing to be waiting so desperately for your food. And as a woman, I just generally think it's creepy for a strange man to be able to look at me through the window. I saw a shape climb out of the car with a box and a paper bag in hand. My mouth was watering by the time the guy reached my porch. My porch light was on and I could tell he was tall and thin, and dressed in a black hoodie with a reflective Nike logo on the front. I couldn't make out much about his face. He dropped the food at the door, took a photo of it, and walked away. I leapt up from the couch, flung the door open, grabbed the food, and closed the door again before the driver had gotten back to his car. I went straight to my bedroom in the back of the house. I decided I was going to eat in bed and binge a reality show on my laptop. After 2 episodes, I was full of pizza and breadsticks and was drifting off. Then a horrifying realization struck me. The next morning was trash day. and the truck always came before I left for work. I needed to take the trash out that night. I cursed and groaned, but I put on shoes and a coat and forced myself to go outside. As I rolled the trash container down the driveway, I saw a parked car on the street in front of my house. It was in the same spot the Uber Eats driver had parked 2 hours earlier. I admittedly hadn't registered what kind of car the Uber Eats delivery guy had driven, but this car was the same general size and shape as his. The engine was cut off and the windows were cracked open, despite it being cold out. After I reached the curb and put the trash in its position, I walked slowly over toward the car. I kept my distance but wanted to get close enough to peek in through the windows. I was probably 10 feet from the car when I saw something bright in the driver's seat. It was a reflective Nike logo, just like the one on my delivery driver's hoodie. I took off running up the driveway, glancing back one time to see if anyone was following me. I swear I saw a shape in the driver's seat, but I didn't look back long enough to get a good look. I closed and locked the front door and turned off my living room lights. I went to my bedroom in the back of the house and pulled up the Uber Eats app. I never even think to look at those pictures they take of the food, but I went to the photo he took. The pizza turned to cement in my stomach and I thought I was going to be sick. The photo he submitted wasn't of the food. It was a photo through my front window of me, peeking over the back of my sofa and watching the driver. It would have been funny if it weren't so creepy. I ran around the house and checked that all my doors and windows were locked. Then I reported him on the Uber app. I tried to find a number to call, but of course, all they had was an electronic form to fill out. I didn't know how to get this man away from my house. I lived in this house for almost 2 years, and somehow I still didn't know my neighbors. I cursed myself for being so antisocial, so content to just come home, close myself up inside, and lose myself in trash TV every night before I fell asleep. Maybe if I had developed a relationship with one of them, they would have alerted me to this mysterious man being parked outside my house for 2 hours. I told myself I would make more of an effort moving forward, but first I had to take care of this. With nobody else to call, I dialed the police. I didn't know what else to do. I explained the situation to them, and they said they would send a car over to drive by as soon as possible and scare the delivery driver away. I grabbed a knife from my kitchen and went to my dark living room. I peeked out the front door again. The car was still there, but I couldn't tell if the driver was still inside. I sat there in my dark house, knife in hand, as I listened for the sound of rattling doorknobs or tapping on my windows. It felt like an eternity, but it was actually only 5 minutes or so before I saw approaching headlights. A police car drove by, slowing down to a crawl as it went by my house. A shape popped up in the driver's seat of the delivery car, and his headlights flashed to life. The cop car wasn't even out of sight by the time the Uber Eats car took off in the opposite direction. I appreciated how quickly the police responded, but it still terrifies me how long the delivery car sat in front of my house without me noticing. If I hadn't remembered to take my trash out, that guy might have sat there all night. He hasn't come back to my house since then, thankfully. An Uber apparently fired him. I also changed my name to MK instead of Marjorie, so drivers couldn't tell whether I was a man or woman. All in all, I was lucky, but I've reached out to my neighbors since then, and I've made friends with a couple of them. I've even been a little friendlier to people at work. I'm going to be more careful with giving out my address and using services like Uber Eats in the future. But now that I have a little more of a community at work and at home, I have more people looking out for me. And I'm looking out for them as well.